Hey everyone, welcome to 5 Minute Friday. So, if you get tight hip flexors and quads, okay, so think tight front of the hips. This is absolutely for you. I've tried these methods with professional footballers, men who sit at the car for long periods, sit at the desk, cyclists, runners. These really work. You need a block or something sturdy, roughly block size to hand. So I just want you to start standing on your shins, all right? So come on your knees, shins and feet, tops of feet to the floor. And we just need to nail the movement of the pelvis to try and help us stretch the front of the hip more. So I want you to bring your attention to the front of your hip points, these bony bits you can feel that are sticking out. And I want you to draw them up towards the belly, and you'll feel your bum move down and forwards. And then take those front of the hip points towards the floor, and you feel your bum move up and back. Draw the front of the hips up towards the belly and then down towards the floor. Okay, so up and down. And as you continue to do that, you'll feel a couple of things. Your lower back change shape. And all you're doing, the pelvis is like, say, a bucket. And you're tipping the bucket forwards, tipping the bucket backwards. We're going to focus on tipping the bucket backwards, so the front of those hip points up. And if you just press the knees, shins and feet a little bit into the floor now, and maybe lean back an inch, you will feel the front of the thighs, front of the hips begin to stretch and engage. Okay? So I want you to start in downward facing dog. You'll see why that comes into play in a moment. Okay? From down dog, take a couple of breaths. Arms reaching, bum lifting and drawing back. And then come forwards to plank and come down into Sphinx just for a couple of breaths. Forearms down, chest up. Tops of feet to the floor. You can wiggle your feet back and you can take them a little bit wider. Just stay there for a breath or two. Good. And then come back into tabletop, hands and knees. Step the right foot forwards, keep the left knee down on the floor. Move the bum back above the back knee. Fingers to the front of those hip points again. Tilt them up towards the belly. Engage your left bum cheek. Press the left knee, shin, foot down into the floor. And with your left hand on the front of your left hip, begin to move forwards and backwards. But I want you to move from the left hip, okay, rather than moving everything. Just let that left hip come forwards and backwards, but really keep that left glute firm. Keep that left lower leg pressing into the floor. Chest is a little bit up, ribs are a little bit in. Good. So you're just dynamically warming up your hip flexors and quads. One of your main hip flexors is one of your quads, your rec fem, and we're kind of isolating that in this sequence a little bit more than maybe some of the other hip flexors, okay? Good. Then step back into downward facing dog. Good. Head forwards to plank. Lower down to the floor. Come into another Sphinx. Just this time bind the hands together. Then curl the belly up off the floor. Create the action of moving those front of hip points up towards the belly. Top of the thighs are lifting up. You're really isolating the front of your core for a moment. You're almost in half forearm plank. Good. And then back into Sphinx. Head back into tabletop. Left foot forwards, right knee down. Move the bum backwards. Fingers touch the front of the hip points. You curl them up. You firm your right bum cheek. You press that right lower leg into the floor. Right hand kind of into the front of the right hip. And move the right hip forwards and backwards. Steady, smooth, and mindful movement, okay? It's not difficult to firm your right bum cheek and press the right lower leg into the floor. It's difficult to keep doing it when your mind starts to wander. We're going for 3, 2, and 1. Come all the way out of that. I want you to just briefly switch the legs. So, right foot forwards now. This time, you're going to take the block, or whatever you've got equivalent of, underneath the right foot. Okay? You start with your bum above your back knee, same process as before. Front of the hip points tilt up. You can immediately feel that tension through the front of the left hip. Left glute, switch it on. Left lower leg press down into the floor. Lift the chest a fraction. Draw the left hip a little bit forwards. Pause there for a moment. And then with that left knee, not only press a bit down, but create the action of pulling forwards towards the front of the mat or the block. Good. 2 or 3 breaths there. You dictate how much you move that left hip forwards. It doesn't have to go far. Excellent. Take your time. Release that. Pause back into down dog for a couple of breaths. With the toes pressed firmly down with the heels dragged back. We're creating loads of tension through the front of the hip. Let's get a little bit of tension down the back of the legs a little bit. Good. Head forwards to plank. Lower down. You're coming into locust pose. Arms back, everything up. Palms facing down. Good. Lift up from the top of the hamstrings. Get some tension through those upper legs on the back of the hip. Nice. Release that. Tabletop. Your left foot steps forwards onto the block. The hips start above the back knee. The fingers to the front of the hips, tilt them up. Good. That back lower leg firmly into the floor. The right glute is firmly on. Right hip a little forwards, not too much. And then that right knee press down, create the action of pulling it forwards. Good. Chest up, chest broad. 2 more breaths. Stay with all those actions. Exhale, release that. Back into downward facing dog. Now, if cobra or up dog are in your practice, feel free to take either of those and chaturanga. But come forwards to plank, lower down to sphinx or locust. Sphinx on the forearms or locust arms back, lift the body, or cobra or up dog. Good. I want there to be a sense of flow to it. And then back into tabletop. This one gets more into the quads. Right foot forwards, bum back again. This time you tuck your back toes under. Front of hips lift up. Draw the hips a little forwards. And then with that back foot, create the action of pressing down and back with the toes and the foot. Good. Switch on your left glute. Hands to prayer at the chest or reach your arms up. Doesn't matter to me. Keep that, another breath. Good. Down dog, plank, lower down, take any back bend you like, and then back into downward facing dog. Good. Smooth, integrated movement. However you get there, knees down, left foot forwards, hips above the back knee, tuck the back toes. Good. Firm your right glute. Lift the front of the hips up. You can feel that immediately. Press those right toes down and back into the floor. Draw the right hip somewhat forwards. Chest is up, chest is broad. Do something with your hands and your arms. Good. 2 more breaths. Nice. Breathe out, release that. And then just come to sit on your bum with your legs out in front of you. And just take the block, height ways up, or whatever it is, inside your left foot. Take the feet a little bit wider than the hips. So we'd be kind of stretching that stuff out, and that's usually half the job. Now we need to strengthen that stuff a little bit up. So just some hip flexion mobility. Easier hands on the floor, more difficult, more integrated for the core, hands to prayer or goalpost the arms. Lift the waist up regardless where your hands are. Put your mind into your left foot, but I want you to lift the left leg from more the top of the left quads. So lift up and just take it over the block and just hover it for a moment on the inside of the block. Lift up again from the top of the left quads, but hover above the block. Lift a little bit up, take it back to the left, hover it slowly towards the floor and place it down. Move the block to the inside of the right foot, re-lift the waist. Don't lift up from the foot, lift up from the top of the right thigh. From there, lift across, and then slowly down on the inside of the block. But you're hovering, you're not touching the floor. Relift, hover above the block, lift a little bit higher if you can, back over to the right, slowly down, hover just before you ground the heel. Good, and then release that. We're going to finish there, so if you got something from this, please like and make sure you're subscribed. But you can do that hip mobility thing as often as you want to. See you next week.